Welcome back to the London Free Press Podcast. Been another very busy week in the city of London and surrounding areas. I'm really excited today because the story that we're focusing on is something that I feel a lot of people may encounter after the 16 months of working from home. So joining me today, London Free Press reporter Norman DeBono. Norm, how are you doing today?
Very well, Lindsay. Thank you for asking. Yeah, no, I'm doing well, and thank you for inviting me to the podcast and asking me to
Thank you for taking time to do it. You wrote a fantastic piece in the pages of the London Free Press, and it's still over at lfpress.com. The title of that piece: As Office Workers Slowly Trickle Back, One London Law Firm Sets Clear Rules. Now, that London law firm is Mackenzie Lake Lawyers in London, and they are already back to work, 150 people back in the office, vaccines mandatory.
So this is actually a really interesting story, and it's really interesting how the story developed. So I've been trying to cover the actual, of course, work from home provisions, and that's impacted especially the core area businesses downtown. And slowly now that vaccines have been rolled out, and we're seeing more people getting vaccinated, hopefully, and thank goodness. Some businesses started to have their workers return to work. This is very early in the process. I'm hearing from a lot of businesses that they want to see people return to the office September, October, into the fall. They're willing to give them the summer. But Mackenzie Lake, out of the gate, said that they wanted to return to work as soon as possible. Of course, as you know, it's a law firm. They think it's very important that a law firm have people in the office working with each other, communicating with each other. And they sort of mandated, you have to get a vaccine and you have to return to work. And they've had no sort of opposition from their employees from what I heard of. 75% of their workers are double vaxxed, and the balance are one vaxxed. And the ones, 25% who have one vaccine, they have already booked their second vaccination, so that's a requirement. And they made it very clear that if an employee had a problem with either of those provisions, they could look for work elsewhere. I was surprised by that. I was surprised by the tone of it, and we had a lot of comments on our Free Press page that sort of were also surprised by that sort of that line in the sand kind of position by the law firm. But it was a law firm, and they have employee law lawyers there, and they seem to think that they were on pretty solid ground with that.
Well, that was going to be kind of my next question. My knee jerk when reading it was, is this even allowed? Now, granted, I understand a lot of people didn't have the opportunity to work from home because they were frontline workers, and life has just kind of continued for them over the past 16 months.
Yeah.
This is the first business that we are seeing kind of in the city and region to take this stance. Do we anticipate more companies doing this, especially ones that maybe didn't adapt as well?
I did a bit of a call to several businesses that are in similar fields, law firms and other offices, and some commercial realtors who are dealing one-on-one with landlords and with businesses returning to work. They hadn't heard of another business taking this position, but I spoke to Mike Peerless, the managing partner at Mackenzie Lake afterwards, and he said that he had had a lot of people, businesses and others in the legal community reach out to him with messages of support and suggesting that they might take a similar position. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the start of a trend. You're starting to see businesses take more of a hard line toward that. And as to whether or not they can do it, I think it is a legal question. If you try to fire someone for not returning to work or for requiring a vaccination, I think it's a gray area, but Mike and Mackenzie Lake made it very clear that they're willing to sort of take on that issue. And as he said to me in the interview, they have employment lawyers on staff, and in the end, if they have to pay someone a severance package to go away as part of a wrongful dismissal suit, they're willing to do that. That's how strongly they feel about this. They really see it as a safety precaution, a safety issue, a health issue. They want to ensure they have clients in there, meeting lawyers, everything from personal injury law to family law or to property law, business law. And they want to make sure that they can tell their clients, this is their position, this is a safe workplace, you can come in here. And so that is invaluable to them. And I think your instincts are right on with this, Lindsay, is that it raises a really interesting issue as to where the standard lies in the workplace going forward, because more and more workplaces are going to be facing return to work. What can employers ask for? What can employees say yes or no to? And it's going to open up a whole area of discussion, when businesses return more fully in the fall. I think it's going to be a very interesting issue to follow, and I really don't know where it's going to, what side the issue is going to fall down on. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see more people returning to work and having to return to work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. This story was kind of a double whammy with regards to mandatory vaccinations, which I guess it's all going to come down to the prerogative of the business. Like you said, if they're prepared to pay severance for employees who don't want that, then that's what they're prepared to do. But it was also interesting to read. This is the first business that I've heard of, non-negotiable return to work. Everything we're seeing so far, and a lot of people still working from home, is there might be hybrid weeks, or if you have the chance to work from home exclusively, if that's what you're into, then that's what you are going to do. Did they give any kind of indication as to why they were so ahead of the curve for this, especially since you said a lot of places are looking at the fall?
Yeah, first of all, you're right on. Most businesses I speak to, including two other law firms that were quoting the story, said they want to work with their employees. And if some people want to do a return to work from home on a phased-in basis, or a hybrid where they're home 2 days a week, in office 3, or home 3, 2, they're willing to accommodate that. So, I mean, I think Mackenzie Lake is right now, they're sort of alone on this. But I wouldn't be, but I think we will see more hybrid sort of scheduled return to work for businesses in the fall, when things do sort of ramp up and hopefully get back to normal. So yeah, I think they will be, I think more businesses will go with a hybrid option. I think it'll be more on the table. I think you'll see more places doing that. I think you'll see some people returning to work, others more at home. And I personally think that that's a pretty positive development if the workplace can accommodate that. If workers, from what I've heard from the workers that I've spoken to and people who are in organized labor, the work from home provision is a money saver. It's a cost saver in the long run, but it's also less anxiety, less stress, more personal time. I think national studies have actually suggested that people are working more from home. Like the output has actually, productivity has increased because people are returning to the work table, their office, maybe after dinner or in the evening, or get up earlier and have an hour to. So productivity has not been a factor, from what I understand, for people who work from home. And so there's a lot of support of that for increased work from home provision in most workplaces, and in research that's done. Mackenzie Lake is sort of flying in the face of that and going in the opposite direction, because they really believe in the team approach. They believe in the culture, workplace culture, which has taken a hit in the pandemic, that camaraderie and that sharing of information between people. And as the story suggested, I quoted a commercial realtor in the story that's saying that what he has heard is that in workplaces that see themselves as perhaps more creative, like architectural firms, for example, where there's more, it's a creative process is involved. They would like to see more people return to work, because they think that creativity in the workplace, sharing of information, communication is vital to that, and feeding off one another sounds kind of very fair thing to say, but the energy of the workplace, the vibe of the workplace, can actually contribute to the productivity and to the quality of work. So places like that are leaning more toward seeing more back to work. Other places are kind of saying more sort of entrenched office workers, finance sector, banking, insurance, are saying, yeah, we can accommodate more work from home. So, but it's early days, right? It's July, and we're going to see this ramp out really probably in September, October. So it's going to be interesting to follow, and I hope we do follow it, sort of see if there is sort of a general pattern that emerges, whether it emerges, whereas where the businesses are going to be taking a hard line and say, like Mackenzie Lake, nope, you got to be back here or else you're fired, or will they say, yeah, we can accommodate, let's work together, and let's sort of share a space.
Yeah, fair enough. I have to know. Sorry, did Mike give any kind of indication as to growing number of cases? So Dr. Chris Mackey, for instance, had said a couple of days ago that our vaccination rates had kind of plateaued. And then we've seen a bit of an uptick. He said 1%, another 1% in such a short period of time because of all these new mobile vaccination clinics, the pop-ups, they're really helping. As of Wednesday, 12 new cases in Middlesex, London. Was there any kind of indication as concern about we are getting over the hill of the pandemic, but we're not there yet?
Yeah, certainly we discussed that. And of course, the Delta variant is a really critical factor that's out there. And it's a very dangerous factor. So that's why they are insisting on vaccinations. I mean, overwhelmingly, the research is suggesting that if you're double vaccinated, that it's a much safer position to be in. You can still get COVID, but it's not at all a serious illness necessarily. You might get flu symptoms, but you won't be hospitalized or perhaps even die. So that's why the vaccination is so critical, and that's why they're insisting on it. And so, like I said, everyone is either double vaccinated or the second shot is scheduled. So they would not, because of the Delta variant and because of the risk of any emerging future variants of a pandemic, of a virus, they wouldn't allow people into the workplace who are not vaccinated. But there is a feeling that if you're double vaxxed, it's a safe provision on the job.
Yeah, Dr. Chris Mackey had basically said last week that once you are double vaxxed plus your 14 days, your pandemic essentially over, which is a good thing and encouraging news. So anybody who hasn't had their vaccinations yet, I think that might be kind of the fire that everybody needed to hear.
Yeah.
Is hope for return to normal. The article was also very interesting because you didn't just speak to Mackenzie Lake, you also spoke to Siskins and Lerner's law firms as well. Now, Siskins announced back in January of 2020, right before the world kind of went for the tank with the pandemic, that they were moving from their Waterloo Street location into the towers at Dundas and Wellington. There was a ton of money poured into this reno, but they are not taking a hard and fast stance like Mackenzie Lake with regards to their staff returning to work, correct?
That's right, and not yet anyway. Again, it's early days, so I wouldn't be surprised if in the fall they say that they may in fact say they want more people returning to work. But both Lerners and both Siskins said that they're following the health guidelines very closely. They're not requiring it right now. They are sort of allowing the option to work from home, but they also said they're going to revisit that in the future. So who knows where that's going to go? And I think it's still early days on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a direction that more people return to the workplace. But right now, there's certainly a willingness to accommodate anybody who wants to work from home, at least on a part-time or provisional basis, that they would hear what they have to say on that, and that would be on the table. So I think that's good news, and I think that's a good employer that would want to hear what their workers want and take their views into account when it came to working conditions and where you're going to conduct work. The other factor that's out there that no one's really talking about right now is too much. Is the financial aspect of it. The fact that if a business can get out of its lease or can reduce the scale of its operation and save money on rent, work from home now gives them an opportunity to do that. We've seen this more in the tech sector, something I didn't get into in that story because it was a very specific story. But I've read early in the pandemic, I wrote about how digital and technology businesses are sort of saying, you know what, this work from home is great and our workers like it. Again, it can be a creative workplace. So there is a trend that's seeing some digital technology firms are seeing a scale back in the workplace or even surrendering leases where they can and doing more work from home. So I think, you'll see a split. You'll see sort of a really divided kind of sector. How it affects the downtown long term is going to be also a very interesting thing to watch that we don't really know yet. That we're going to see it. We're going to see a lot of businesses down. We might see fewer people in the core, and that would be too bad for the businesses that are already hurt very badly by the pandemic. But they're relying on that downtown traffic to sort of get them back for coffee and lunches and for beer after work, and that could be lessened somewhat. That would be unfortunate, but that's a very real possibility in the future as workplaces scale back their presence in the office sector.
There's definitely that possibility, but the knee-jerk with that as well was. If there's less people downtown, I, who never worked downtown, would be more inclined to go downtown mid-afternoon, grab a bite to eat, to physically take a break from my work, get up from my desk, go stretch my legs, go support a local business, and get out there. So you're right. This is going to be very interesting to watch unfold. I really appreciate the time. This piece was fantastic. I encourage anybody who's listening right now to head over to lfpress.com and read the full article there. We're just going to have to sit and wait and see what happens.
Yeah. What it underscores is what everyone already knows is that the COVID-19 pandemic may be waning. We hope it is. We hope that we're sort of nearing the end of the pandemic, but we're going to be seeing the long-term effects of this pandemic in the workplace for a long time, perhaps years to come. I think it's fundamentally changed the way we work, and we don't really understand how the full ramifications of that yet. But it's altered our lives forever, and we're going to sort of it's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out. But thank you for your time today, Lindsay. I really appreciate your questions.
Thank you for your time, Norm, and stay well. Just a
Oh.
reminder, we are on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, of course, over at lfpress.com. If you like what you're hearing, please hit subscribe. We'll be back again next week with another edition of the London Free Press Podcast. Until then, stay well.